I'm here with some book recommendations. I've read most of these, and the ones that I have not read, they have been recommended to me by friends, by people that I follow on Instagram who are like incredibly vocal and read a lot and have the time to read a lot, or make the time to read a lot and educate themselves. So I will get right to it. Also, I have my coffee. I have this fake plant that I put behind me. I'm ready to help educate and to recommend. There are some books that I don't physically have with me that I will put a picture of on the screen for you. The first one that I have is, these are not necessarily in any specific order, by the way. The first one that I have is Freedom is a Constant Struggle, Ferguson, Palestine, and the Foundations of a Movement by Angela Davis. Brief history, Angela Davis is, she was incredibly active in the civil rights movement. She was a part of the Black Panther Party, a communist, a lesbian. Overall, one of the coolest people I have ever heard about. So, Freedom is a Constant Struggle. The little blurb says, it is a collection of essays, interviews, speeches, reflecting on the importance of Black feminism, intersectionality, prison abolitionism. For today's struggles, she discusses the legacies of previous liberation movements like the Black Freedom Movement to South African anti-apartheid, discussing in-depth specific like chapters and essays and sections specifically on Ferguson, specifically on Palestine. This one, like chapter 6, is titled From Michael Brown to Assata Shakur, The Racist State of America Persists. Like, incredibly relevant. I think this was published in like 2013, maybe. No, it couldn't have been, because 2014. Published in 2016. So, written recently about important overarching struggles for freedom and for equality. Read it for, some of these were for classes, but most of these I opted, like even if they were for classes, I myself was able to choose an author to focus on. And I've written some papers on Angela Davis, so there'll be a few more. But Freedom is a Constant Struggle, Angela Davis. The second one I have is Women, Race, and Class, again, by Angela Davis. It is a book that has taught me so much about intersectional feminism. Women, Race, and Class has been really instrumental in helping me kind of understand how, you know, feminism and racism and classism and sexism, racism, and classism, I guess, are all so interconnected, and dismantling one oppressive system may not be fully possible, and most likely is not fully possible without dismantling all of these other oppressive systems. So, Women, Race, and Class, the little blurb on it says, a powerful study of the women's liberation movement in the U.S. from abolitionist days to the present demonstrates how it has always been hampered by the racist and classist biases of its leaders. I had heard a quote from Gloria Steinem on a podcast she did that was like, we can't fully eradicate racism without eradicating sexism, because controlling reproduction controls race. And I was like, you might be onto something, Gloria. And then I read this, and everything that I was taught in history classes in high school has been wrong and has been racist. And I knew that my history classes were racist, but like, I didn't know how deeply wrong they were. Like, stop telling me Susan B. Anthony was the savior of the feminist movement. You excluded Black women. Like, I don't want the right to vote as a woman if not all women can vote. The next one, I have a sticky note on the front that says intersectional, just in case you wanted to know. It's edited by Angela Davis, but it's If They Come in the Morning, Voices of Resistance. It says this book is not only an account of Davis's incarceration and the struggles surrounding it, but also perhaps the most comprehensive and thorough analysis of the prison system in the United States. I am unable to talk about racism in the United States without discussing the prison system, because the prison system and the criminal justice system is the most effective tool white nationalists and white supremacists and white people in general have currently to oppress people of color, specifically Black people. Again, everything is so interconnected that I can't recommend enough that you educate yourself on the intersections of sex and gender and race and class. It's required reading for life. Again, the Angela Y. Davis reader. This one has a lot of the things that these three have in them. If I can recommend any of these books to you, it's probably this one of Angela Davis's books. It's probably this one, just because it is like a comprehensive collection of some of her best works. Okay, so on to books that are not by Angela Davis. The next book I have is Evicted by Matthew Desmond. I myself have not read this. I know, it's literally a crime. I live in Milwaukee and I have not read this, but every single person that I know and love who is educated and intelligent and, and informed and engaged has told me to read this book, and I just simply haven't. I don't know why yet, but this is, my friends and I were actually talking yesterday, and my best friend said, everybody who moves to Milwaukee, like, this is required reading, but this is next on my reading list. Follows 8 families in Milwaukee as they each struggle to keep a roof over their heads. Evicted transforms our understanding of poverty and economic exploitation while providing fresh ideas for solving one of 21st century America's most devastating problems. Its unforgettable scenes of hope and loss remind us of the centrality of home, without which nothing else is possible. Milwaukee has consistently ranked number 1 or 2 or 3. I know that in the previous few years it's been number 1 in racial segregation. I'm very grateful to have gone to college in this city, because I have firsthand experience seeing, like, I know what street separates white and black Milwaukee. Evicted, please read it. It also helps you understand the intersection of class and race, like understanding that poverty is racist. Evicted, please read it. Please read it. I will read it with you. We will have a book club. I will read it with you. This one, I have also not read this because I'm a garbage human being. We Were 8 Years in Power by Ta-Nehisi Coates was a lament of Reconstruction-era Black politicians as the American experiment in multiracial democracy ended with the return of white supremacist rule in the South. In this sweeping collection of new and selected essays, Ta-Nehisi Coates explores the tragic echoes of that history in our own time, the unprecedented election of a black president followed by a vicious backlash that fueled the election of the man Coates argues is America's first white president. I promise you I will read this. And again, there's another book by Ta-Nehisi Coates that I believe is more of a personal collection of essays, or not necessarily a memoir, but closer to a memoir. It's called Between the World and Me, and that is also on my reading list. Again, just to connect feminism and anti-racism. Roxane Gay, if you consider yourself a feminist but you have not read feminist essays and work by Black feminists, honey, we got some work to do. I have some work to do. I have read Bad Feminists. These are personal essays by Roxane Gay, who is one of my favorite authors. Discusses a lot of really pertinent topics on modern day feminism, whether we are in 3rd or 4th wave as of right now, and what intersectional feminism looks like, and just generally reading books about feminism through that are written by Black women, because Black women have historically been completely excluded from these massive feminist movements, massive feminist movements, the ones that we learn about that were run by white women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. Taking time to make sure that your feminism is intersectional is so incredibly important if you call yourself a feminist. If you care about women, if you care about humans, making sure that your feminism is not just white feminism. Next 2 I have are both from Zadie Smith. We can go with this one first. I have absolutely loved reading the essays that I have of hers. One of the first essays in the book was actually talking about a library in her hometown being taken down, or being, renovated and created and turned into something other than a library. And she just writes so beautifully. Her most like well-known book is called White Teeth, and I have not read that, but when I checked this out again at my local bookstore, the guy there always gives me recommendations, and he was like, have you read this book? And I was like, no, I haven't. This is the first one that I'm picking up of hers, because again, I like essays more than fiction. But he was like, you have to read this book. So when I have heart, when I have time, when I have energy, when I can, I will be reading more, I promise. But Zadie Smith Swing Time it was again on sale. Listen, I just peruse the sale section for books that I have heard good things about and books by authors that are relatively diverse. Swing Time. Okay. It says 2 brown girls dream of being dancers, but only one, Tracy, has the talent. The other has ideas about rhythm and time, about black bodies and black music, about what constitutes a tribe or makes a person truly free. It's a close but complicated childhood friendship that ends abruptly in their early 20s, never to be revisited, but never quite forgotten either. This one is just one to like both make you think, and to, especially if you're a white person, like hearing stories about black girls, about black people, like that's so incredibly important. If I read fiction, I don't want all of the protagonists in all of the books I read to be white. Like that's not helping me. That is not an anti-racist practice. And like, yeah, I can absolutely read books as a white person with a white protagonist, but if every single book that I read has a white protagonist and has, you know, white supporting characters, I don't want it. Swing Time, beautifully written. Zadie Smith is an incredible author. Maybe it'll be on sale at your local bookstore. Then the last book is called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And if you've seen the film 13th that Ava DuVernay did, if you've seen it, it is like that on steroids when we're talking about prisons, the prison system. The history of slavery, and then how like, police forces were originally slave patrols to steal and return enslaved men and women. Vagrancy laws, about how all of these laws and all of these like political tools were weaponized to re-enslave Black Americans, and how mass incarceration today, like the history of mass incarceration today, everybody has themselves or knows somebody that has interacted with the criminal justice system, and knowing that the criminal justice system in itself is a racist system means that you need to do some work and that you need to educate yourself on how exactly that came to be in order for us as a national community to dismantle our biases, our prejudices, our racist systems. So The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander is one of the first steps that you can take to understanding mass incarceration today and understanding the way that law has been weaponized. I do have one more book, I'm so sorry, but it's called Killing the Black Body, and it says exposed America's systemic abuse of Black women's bodies, from slave masters' economic stake to in bonded women's fertility to government programs that coerced thousands of poor Black women into being sterilized as late as the 1970s. These abuses pointed to the degradation of Black motherhood and the exclusion of Black women's reproductive needs in mainstream feminist and civil rights agendas. This book, if you are going into the medical field, if you're going into the legal field, if you have a heart, if you have a brain, you have to read it. If you're interested in any of these, I will attempt to link them down below. Please do your work. Please. Oh, I lied. One more. Me and White Supremacy by Layla F. Saab. It is a book and an interactive workbook for you as a white person or anybody who benefits from white privilege to address and begin, taking down and eradicating all of your biases, your prejudices. It discusses things like white silence, white fragility. I have done the workbook, the free workbook from like a year and a half or 2 years ago, and I am looking to purchase Me and White Supremacy from my local bookstore just so that I can economically support her, and that so I can continue doing the work on myself. So if you are a person who benefits from white privilege, please look into that too. Please do the work. I don't know.